see you guys in the dark.
Having been admitted to the ER overnight, I was transferred to the second floor the following day for extended observation and treatment. I was lucky enough to get a 2-person room to myself, overlooking the graveled roof of the cafeteria and gray stone walls of the adjacent ward. Directly across the hall was also a patient with a 2-person room to herself, for reasons which will have been made abundantly clear. From what I gathered, she had been in the ward since the previous day, when I was sleeping in the ER. How do I know this girl? The girl is loud. She was talking to her friend on her cell phone about how she was pissed drunk coming back from a guy's house, pissed in her car, and crashed. My introduction to her was actually a nurse telling her, and I quote, "Do you realize we're being cold with you? We're not giving you a lecture. You're old enough to know better." She might have whiplash or lower back problems because she's been put on morphine and was in a wheelchair. But that's not even the start. She was constantly screaming at other people, other patients. "Close your fucking jacket. I don't want to see your butt," when they passed in front of her door. Mind you, she refused to wear the jacket, kept her single change of clothes and beanie hat. Also, "Don't look. Also, just close your damn door. Hell!" She even went into the other patients' rooms and scolded them to properly tie their jacket. The patients were all elderly, so I never heard anything from them, of course. She curses at the nurses for confiscating her smokes because she tried to light up in her room. "I'll freaking sue you." Yeah, sure you will. When she got the evening meal, she yelled into the hallway because she didn't like apple juice and wanted something completely different. She never rang the nurse bell. She just moans loudly when someone passes by to try and get their attention. All the freaking time. She talked to me once, the first night I was in the ward. After lights out, I got up, hunched over, holding onto the drip pole. I shuffled to my room's bathroom. As I was opening the door, with difficulty I might add, being bent over, holding myself for support, dragging wires and such, she just states, "I can see your butt." She should have to be sitting on the edge of her bed and peering outside her room purposely to even spot me between curtains. My mind went to 2 places. The first and strongest instinct. 65% of me wanted to respond, "Then just don't look at me." Although the other 35% won out, thinking, "No, she's just crazy. Don't make yourself a target." De-escalate. So I am calmly stated I'm going to the bathroom. This worked. I don't think she expected any response because she said the calmest thing I'd heard all week from her. "Oh?" Next morning, all aboard the crazy train. I woke up to her yelling across the ward, to the room diagonally across the hall from her, to an older woman clipping their nails. "What's that freaking noise? Stop making that freaking noise! Ah! Make it freaking stop!" She had also vomited in the bathroom in the morning and had asked a nurse for a doctor to look at it. Well, the doctor wasn't there yet. A person in the other connected room had to go to the bathroom, so obviously they had flushed. Thus, Miss Bottle of Joy and Sunshine started yelling obscenities at her from her own room. "You stupid biatch! Why did you flush it?" etc., etc. That got her nowhere. So instead, she decided to climb onto a wheelchair and run after a patient whose butt she saw, screaming, "I will rip off their jacket! It's freaking disgusting!" No idea what happened with that, but she did come back soon after. I don't think anybody was assaulted, though. That night, she called her actual boyfriend and started questioning him very loudly about red dots on her crotch. She swears it's not from her because she was tested before being with him. Throw pressure on her boyfriend. He admitted to diddling a girl when he was at the girl's place. Miss Sunshine turned up her psychotic yelling to 11, trying to get him to admit to more, then locked herself in the bathroom. That did not help the sound volume at all. Later at dinner, she yelled at the nurses saying that she did not want her side of the bathroom door locked. It wakes her up when other patients go to the bathroom. I told them 6 times not to go to the bathroom, but they just don't listen to me. She was back in bed, pressing the nurse call button, moaning loudly, calling into the hallway. She wants morphine now. The nurse comes in. "You're not due for morphine for another 27 minutes. Little Miss Sunshine. Before it was 2 hours. Now it's every 4 hours? What's it going to be next time? Every 8 hours? Nurse, that's exactly right. More yelling. Then her dinner tray goes flying. Nurse, no, no. Steps into the hallway. Call a Node White. Intercom. Code White, second floor. E Ward, room 2200. Code White. 3 security guards come running in. Miss Sunshine is pinned down, under protests from her, almost like trying to throw a cat with each hand at the same time. She's strapped down, legs, arms, wrists, and neck. Resident doctor comes in, tells her she can wait, or have 2 Advil. She says, and I quote, "No, I don't want drugs that will mess with my mind." Doctor, you're taking morphine. That messes with your mind a lot more than you think. She is then given a choice for Advil, orally, or a suppository. She answers, "Not in the mouth." So? Then she learns what a suppository really is. Remember how she is strapped down? Remember how she refuses to wear the jacket? Remember how she's still wearing her only change of clothing? The jeans are then ripped. Crying is had. In between sobs, all I hear is, "Ow, ow, ow, it burns, ow, it burns." All I can think of is, stop clenching. She is left strapped in, door closed. Reports and paperwork are made out in the hall. She is being left to scream and tire herself out until the meds and morphine kicked in. Silence in the ward is soothing and creepy. Shortly after, when it rains, it pours. Coincidentally, her grandmother comes by to visit her. She somehow got a heads up. While still being strapped in, she's pleading and pleading to be unstrapped so her grandmother doesn't see her like this. Nurses aren't having any of it, though. Once her grandmother left, she starts yelling again. She says she wants to pee right before she pissed herself. Nurses responded, "Okay, well, all we had to do was cooperate. You had many, many chances. Now you have to wait in your pee." Cue full exorcist mode for about an hour. They finally unstrapped her after 3 or 4 hours. Honestly, no sympathy. She really needed to be strapped in. Heck, she was one step away from assaulting other patients. They brought in a psych to listen to her. Kudos to the hospital, though. "They ripped my whole pants. I peed my only pants. My pants are now ruined." Well, guess now you have to wear the jacket. Funny out how that works. So, the next day, there's a doctor now, consulting her. They took away her smokes. They are now refusing to give them to her. When suddenly, the intercom goes off. They called another code white because she was yelling and spat at a senior doctor who was listening to her. The security guards strap her down again. Nurse told her the guards to use face shields because she's a spitter and has unknown VD. She started crying and breaking out. Finally, she broke down, it seemed. The crying was different. A distinctive note of powerless underneath it all. Unmistakable, though. But that was just an illusion, because she went forth psychotic as soon as she unstrapped her for the night. They closed all the doors in the ward, and the nurses and nurses' aide visited each patient and told them that the entire ward had been prescribed Ativan to help us sleep. Opt in, of course, but it's there if they wanted it. The next morning, her kid came in to visit, and I was discharged that afternoon. No idea what happened to her. I don't really care to find out. So the girl across the hall from me, let's not meet again.
In college, I got into a relationship with a guy. He was fine until he found Jesus. He quickly went crazy, claiming demons spoke to him, trying to buy weapons from some shady friends he had, fantasizing about how he would hurt people, and becoming incredibly controlling and physically abusive. Needless to say, I got out of there after a few threats and some really crazy behaviors. He left me alone for a while, and I thought that was that. I was heading to my dorm after a meeting one night when I decided to pass it and go to the student union, which was right down the street, to get some ice cream. As I passed the dorm, I heard steps behind me. I turned around, and I thought I saw someone in a white shirt duck behind a big signboard. I kept walking, listening very carefully. I heard something move and whipped around again. There, a person his size, staring at me behind a tree. I couldn't see very well, but it really looked like him. I was mildly freaked out by then, but just walked a little bit faster. I'd hear the occasional footsteps and breathing behind me, but I didn't dare to stop or let on that I knew someone, probably him, was there. I knew he owned a gun. It would likely put a bullet into me given the chance, because he was that psycho and upset that I dared to break up with him. I walked all the way to the Union and got some ice cream and just sat there in the store eating, unwilling to go back out into the unlit street in case it was my crazy ex. I still hadn't mustered the nerve to head back when my phone buzzed. My heart just fell out of my chest when I saw the message. It was some of my friends, a sweet couple. They'd been walking way behind me when they saw something that alarmed them enough to text me. "Your ex is walking around the street." They called me before I could even text them back. "Where are you? Your ex is prowling around here near your dorm. He was coming back from the direction of the Union. I think he had a gun. Was he with you? What's going on?" Panicked, I assured them that I had not been with him, but someone who looked like him had been following me, and I was at the Union and was too scared to go back alone. They practically yelled at me to stay there and not go anywhere, and that they were coming my way. A few minutes later, they came running into the Union breathless, eyes wide, asking me why he was at my dorm and what had happened. This was possibly what scared me the most. The boyfriend, who is a black belt in karate and is never scared, looked absolutely terrified. He was coiled into some kind of fighting stance and looking around wildly, afraid that my ex would appear with his gun. They told me they were taking me back to my dorm and calling the cops. They sandwiched me between them, and we walked back to my dorm as quickly as we dared, the boyfriend walking in front and yelling into the darkness that my ex better not try anything. I let the two of them into my dorm, and we went up to my room, where my roommates put in a frantic phone call to the police. As we peeked out the window facing the streets inside of the dorm, there he was, lurking in the trees to the side of the dorm, looking up. A streetlight reflected something in his hand, something shiny. I saw him tug at the .22 I realized he was carrying and look up. We locked eyes, and I saw something kind of like rage in his eyes that froze me. In that moment, I knew he really was out to end me and my friends, and I had foiled him this time. He quickly turned and ran away through the trees. We didn't know whether he would come back and try to break in or something, so we called the police again, and lo and behold, sirens within minutes, and officers with guns drawn combing the area. They caught him a few hours later, still with the .22 in his hand. He confessed he was indeed going to hurt us if he had the chance, but he didn't want to take the pot shots at me with my friends there. Apparently, since I'd broken up with him, I was given over to Satan, and it was his duty to make sure I died and went to hell. Of course, he went to jail, and later to a mental hospital, and I moved out of that dorm a week later. I just couldn't live with the thought that he would break out. And come after me again. I got some cop friends to keep an eye on my roommates until they could move out too. I was never really the same after all of this. I was so afraid and paranoid for years. Now, I can be out and about without any fear, but I still have nightmares about him staring at me through the trees gun in hand, and rage in his eyes.
For some background, I'm a 15-year-old freshman in high school. I moved to my current town in the middle of 6th grade. When I first moved, I met Jay, and we became friends pretty quickly, and it was obvious he had a crush on me. I wasn't interested in dating until high school, so I turned him down when he asked me out in 7th and 8th grade. After rejecting him the first time, he changed. Jay started acting creepy, perverted, and I just got a terrifying feeling in my gut when around him. At my 8th grade formal, he followed me around taking pictures of me. It was pretty creepy, but we started talking again after an incident at school occurred, and I questioned him, which doesn't relate to the story at all. Jay was always very creepy when we talked. He would call me beautiful, sexy, etc., which I told him made me feel very uncomfortable. He asked me out, and I told him no. He started calling me baby and telling me he loved me and wouldn't stop even when I told him to. This is about the time that he starts popping up in the stairwells I needed to use to get to class, and taking long drinks from the water fountain right outside the classroom door I was in. He seemed to just constantly be in the places I frequented. Jay would stare at me in class and give me this unsettling grin whenever I made eye contact with him. Jay gave me the chills, and I was not excited when he told me that he was going to homecoming. I went with a bunch of my friends, and as soon as we walked in, I saw Jay standing around looking for me. I had told Sophie, my best friend, about him, and she noticed him too. Our school is divided into 2 lunchrooms, the large and small commons, which are connected by 2 hallways. One of them had the girls' bathroom and a hallway everyone put their heels in, and the other was a dark hallway that the principal's office door was in. We went down the dark hallway, and he saw me. Jay pushed back a bunch of people to get right behind me and whispered in my ear, "Holy fuck, you look so dang sexy." He just mumbled something and hurried off. We hit the dance floor, forming a large circle of just our friends. I noticed that he kept walking around our group, looking at me as he walked by. We weren't dirty dancing, just having a fun time. I taught my drum major how to do a wobble, and we were really getting into spirits of things. Sophie and I eventually got thirsty and went to take a pee break and get some water after a few other girls. But on our way back, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned back, and Jay was standing there. The following conversation ensued. Jay says, "I need to talk to you." "Okay, what's up?" "I have to ask you something." I'm standing there questioning. Jay asks, "Can you leave us alone?" to Sophie. I need to speak with her all. Noah, who is a mutual friend. "Hey y'all, what's up?" Noah put Jay in a chokehold, and Sophie and I ran out of there. We laughed it off nervously before heading back into our circle. Apple-bottom jeans came on, and we were getting funky fresh when I saw Jay come up behind me. I jumped into the circle and got low, 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 playing it off as Sophie closed the gap, keeping him out. He just paced around our circle, staring at me, just watching. I have really bad anxiety, and I was getting stressed out at this. I was trying not to cry as I felt like prey being circled. Sophie turns over her shoulder when he walks past her. Sophie asks him, "Do you need something?" Jay replies with, "I need to ask OP something." "I don't think you do, Jay." "Let me talk to her, please." "She doesn't want to talk to you, Jay." Jay then storms off, pushing a few people out of his way. Sophie takes me to the bathroom to calm down, and eventually we decide if he starts following us again, we'll tell someone. As we're walking out, Jay is standing against the wall, turns and leaves as soon as I make eye contact. We make a sharp right into the small commons where we tell the teachers. Guess what? It turns out we told the sexist asshole teacher at my school, and he didn't do anything about it. I'm unsure of what to do when I run into Stacy and Isabel. Isabel is a senior and a fellow guard member. She's kind of like my mentor. I go up to her and ask her if she's there with anybody. When she tells me no, I ask her if I can stay with her and explain the whole situation. She consoles me and promises to stay by my side. Stacy disappears after hearing what happened. Isabel takes me back, and we start dancing again. But we notice Jay doing laps again, passing our circle over and over. Isabel tells me he is talking to another guy and pointing at me. Then Stacy comes up to me, saying that she told him to leave me alone, but he screamed at her to F off and threatened to hit her if she talked to him like that again. We tried to continue dancing. Then Sophie grabs my hand. I look over to see Jay walking up to me, his hands balled into fists. Isabel puts her arm out and starts to tell him to leave me alone, but he pushes her out of the way. I grabbed my friend and ran. I was looking behind me at him giving chase when I ran smack dab into the principal. In hysteria, I tell her he's stalking me, and he pushed my friend. This amazing principal chases him down, putting him in a holding room. She came back and took a statement from me. Stacy told me she saw him get escorted out. The rest of the night was a blast. I had way too much punch, and it was overall an awesome night. I sent Jay a text this morning, telling him very clearly that we were no longer friends, and that he made me feel unsafe and not to contact me ever again, or the principal would get involved again. Then I blocked him for good. I'll have to see him again tomorrow in class, but I plan on avoiding him as much as possible, and if he talks to me, ignoring him. So Jay, even though I'll probably see you tomorrow, let's not meet again. So now, today, I'm at school, and Jay hasn't tried to talk to me, but he kept passing our lunch table and followed me when I went to the bathroom by myself. I also found out he has done similar things to 2 other girls, who I'm going to try to talk to and get a little more information on how they handled it. My friends have been super supportive, and they're all walking me to and from my classes. I think things might be okay from here on out, but I'll update if anything major happens. 2 weeks go by, a lot, and nothing has happened at the same time. I haven't been sleeping great, and when I do, I have vivid nightmares. The 2 that are most frequent are I'm at school, and he storms into my classroom with a gun, and I'm hiding in the attic, and he's in my house, dragging something heavy on the ground and sharpening a knife, telling me to come out and dance with him. I have this feeling of dread every time I see Jay, but I have been trying to brush it off and not let it affect anything. I really just want to move on, but I have been having a lot of trouble. I noticed the popping up in stairwells and passing the lunch table for the first 2 or 3 days, and then it suddenly stopped. I figured he had given up, until I went to lunch with my drum major, who we'll call Dawn. She asked me about how things are going, and I told her about the frequent incidences where we were nearby, and then them suddenly ending. She proceeded to tell me that she and Isabel had told some other seniors that I had classes with or nearby the problems I was having. Apparently, I'm well liked by the seniors, enough for them to tell him they were watching him and would make his school year the last one here if he did anything else to me, which explains the sudden disappearances. The strangest part is that I don't know who these guardian angels are. I told Dawn to thank them for me, and I've been figuring out who is the spy in the room and just striking up a conversation with them, so don't mess with the seniors. I also told some of my teachers about what happened. I only told the ones that taught classes that I had with Jay, because I didn't want it spreading everywhere. One was sympathetic and promised to seat us away from each other and keep us out of groups together, and the other went above and beyond. I told her about it, and she hugged me, promising me she would help me fix it, and that she would talk to him. I came into class the next day, and before I went in, she told me that she told him to stay away from me, and asked if I could stay after school to tell her about the entire thing. I agreed. Actually, reading my post on here, since it has the most accurate details, I gave more of a background to it. She told me that she wanted to help me. She told me that she thought that there were some serious issues with some of his texting, and that it was emotional manipulation and abuse. She told me the flirting after I asked him not to was sexual harassment, and the incident at homecoming was stalking. She wants me to print off my text messages with him and begin a folder of evidence to give to the school so it's documented. She informed me that there was a school therapist she thought I should consider, and assured me that as long as I wasn't a danger to myself or others, my parents wouldn't have to know, which I wanted to keep a secret for now. She asked me if it was okay to make an appointment with the school counselor, so he could refer me to the therapist legally. I agreed, and she's going to pull me out of PE tomorrow to meet with him. The last thing she asked me was if I wanted to drop out of her class, and the other class that I have with him. I don't think I'm going to, because this prick has done enough, and he doesn't get to take anything else away from me, thank God.
Okay, this happened a few years ago, and honestly is the only reason I'm so much more cautious when I'm out and about nowadays. As in, keys between my fingers past 6 p.m. if I'm alone, and spray deodorant in my bag if I can fit it, as well as occasionally carrying a craft knife in my bag too. Also, sorry it's long. I kept trying to shorten it, but I felt it left out too many details, and frankly, writing it out was kind of like a bit of a relief to me. I never spoke about it in detail with anyone. My parents and sister know the rough outlines, but not the details of what happened. I don't think, at least. I'd had an interview in the city center, and had met with a couple of girlfriends afterwards. I was dressed quite nicely. White blouse, black cardigan, black trousers, and some cute kitten heels. It had been raining, and so I was quite damp and blitch. You can fill in the blanks from there. It looked like the results of a wet t-shirt contest, or a car wash gone wrong. My friends had to go home, so I hopped on the bus that stopped essentially right outside my house. It wasn't late. I sat at the back of the bus where you usually have 9 seats, 4 facing backward, 5 facing forward, so that the heat from the engine of the shitty old bus would warm me up a little. This guy, Frank, was already sat there, but was tucked away in a corner, and I had headphones in, so assumed he wouldn't talk to me, was kinda harmless. I was incorrect about this. Soon as the bus took off, Frank shuffled over next to me and said something. I took an earphone out and asked him what he said, and he basically just said, "Hey, how's it going?" "What have you been doing today, Missy?" I replied politely and started putting my headphones back in, but he started talking again. This time he introduced himself and reached out to shake my hand. I gave him a fake name and shook his hand. He wouldn't let go. For like a solid minute at least, and was staring at my cleavage before I even said my name. I pulled my hand away, and he put his on my thigh. This is where I should have gotten the bus driver involved, or at least moved some seats. Guess what? I did neither of these things. We talked for about 5 minutes or more. I think the physical touch sort of sent me into minor shock. I froze a little bit at this. He started asking me personal questions, such as who I lived with, who would be home when I got home, things like that. I lied and told him my butch as shit girlfriend would be waiting for me as she cooked dinner for me. That's all creepy old men do on buses. He started asking about our relationship. How long had we been together? Would we get married? Did we want kids? Would we need a donor, etc.? Your usual shit. While he was asking all this crap, a young guy, Sam, who was maybe my age at the time, had gotten on the bus, made eye contact with me, and sort of half smiled, then went to the top deck. So after Frank asked me, somehow line-crossing question of, will your girlfriend be waiting for you in the shower? I stood up, told him I recognized a friend going upstairs, and practically ran up the stairs to the top deck, where I explained everything to Sam. He let me sit by him in case Frank came upstairs after me. The question was line-crossing for me, I think, because of the way he stared at me when he said it. I vividly remember him licking his lips and clearing his throat and everything. It was quite vile. I got home about 5 minutes after going upstairs. Frank was thankfully no longer on the bus. When I got into the house, nobody was home. My parents and my sisters were all out elsewhere, and I tried calling them all, but nobody answered. So I cried and shook, and then threw up. For almost 2 hours, I was a shaky mess, even when they got home, and had nightmares for weeks, and saw him everywhere I went, although when I'd check, he definitely wasn't there. Never saw him again, and wrote in a report to the bus company. I think telling him the day and rough time I was on the bus, where I sat, and roughly what he and I looked like. I honestly got the creeps just writing about this, even though I've wrote about it briefly in an Ask Reddit comment in the past. So, creepy piece of shit on the bus who frankly ruined my day after having an amazing interview, let's not meet ever again. Please.
Okay, let's set the scene. I'm a 6th grade band student, 12 at the time, and I'm at my private lessons with my teacher for once. It was mid-December, and I was notified that since it turned out my mom hadn't paid for my lessons, I wasn't allowed to take them. Unfortunately, by the time I learned this, the late bus that would drop off after-school kids already left. I had tried to call my mom with the school phone. She didn't buy us any phones at all because she never trusted us. But she wasn't answering. I decided, screw it, and just started walking home. Now the layout of the area is like this. The front has a circle for drop-offs that lead to a road. This road also has a church towards the right of the school, if you look directly at the front. This road has another road that goes straight to the other side. On the opposite end of the road, there's a car wash and a mini-mall. And on the other end of the road the school leads to in the front of the church is another, smaller church. I don't know why, there just is. It borders the suburbs most of the kids lived in. When I'm about to cross from the parking lot to the suburbs, creepy salesman just jumps from behind me. He was a white, male, blonde, with brown eyes. I don't know what exactly he was wearing, but we'll just be safe and say he was wearing normal clothes. This is a conversation we had. Hey. Me turning around in confusion, with some surprise. Yeah? You want to buy some Christmas presents? I'm not a stupid kid. I've heard of multiple of scary stories about serial killers and all those other things. This guy immediately tipped my creepo radar by the gazillions. Not only that, but I'm a 12-year-old kid with no job and obvious student attire at like 9 to 10 at night, and dark outside too. Now, as I internally decide it'll be a cold day in hell before I do any interacting with this fellow, I answer with this, "No man, I'll see you later." After that, he just walked off. No pleading, no further interaction, no other creepy things. Just went away after that. I walked away quickly too, picking up a big stick I ran into just in case he came back. I started getting really paranoid as I walked back home, scared that he would end up returning with determination to do whatever he may have planning with me. I started to panic when I remembered just how far my apartment was, and the actual route I would have to take to get there. I decided to walk back, returning to the front to see my mom yelling my name in tears. When we saw each other, we did the stereotypical running and hugging thing in the movies. We both started crying. I would recognize that she was scared, and I started apologizing. She said that it was okay, and we went inside the front office. We told the front office ladies I was fine. She had asked for their help in finding me before I came back. I ended up learning that my mom noticed that I wasn't at home, and came to the school soon after I left. Had called all her friends to help find me in our apartments, and got some staff to help her look for me at school. We drove home, and I told her everything that had happened. She wasn't mad, and she was glad that I handled the salesman situation the way I did. When we went home, we let everyone know I was found, and that was the end of it. We never called the cops.
but we still tell the story from time to time. I still have the stick, and if I look around, I can find it and show pictures. I never saw or heard of him again. So, to the creepy salesman who walked up to 12-year-old me at night trying to get me to buy your Christmas presents, let's not meet again.
I'll see you guys in the dark.
I had 3 aliases which I used, but only a close online friend of mine knew that all were mine. Nathan was my main link to the dark web, since he somehow spent more time on it than I did, even when the only thing I did other than ghosting him was playing Halo with him for my friends list. What I liked about him is that neither of us mentioned our last names or any real information, even though we both could have looked it up at the time and found pretty much whatever we wanted about the other person. That being said, I trusted Nathan more than almost anyone, and he knows more about this story than I'll be willing to admit on here. During university, I roomed with a local dealer who, unknown to the education board that expelled him, worked for me. It was freaking easy to order narcotics online like MDMA and X if you knew where to look. I even had them shipped to my dorm room's local P.O. box at one time without anyone being any of the wiser. I'd get them online. My former friend would use his real-life connections to sell them once I didn't really have any of my own. This was around the time that I felt that I held all the cards, and no one could touch me if they couldn't track my IP address. I was in the second year of my biomed course when I got into the stupid shit. Scumbag pieces of crap would be sharing snuff videos online that would make even the most messed up pornography you've laid eyes upon look freaking like white bread. This was why I only used links that I either found myself, or more often the ones that Nathan had given me. We would spend days, literally days, just marveling at all the crazy shit which people could get away with. Yeah, the government had shut down the main sites like Silk Road and Mad Onion, but those were like the only ones that the idiots online seemed to ever take notice of. Other hackers would message me on forums asking for sites to get weed and other drugs from, which was as simple as pointing in a freaking direction. The university claimed to monitor internet traffic to stop people from doing freaky things online after they heard people were hacking students' accounts and ruining online schedules. But I guarantee you that they did absolutely nothing to people who were actually doing it. Note, I'm not confessing to having done any of these acts. I just know exactly which individuals have done it. By third year, I had made enough money to have a long screen setup of my own, which made decrypting sites' details a lot quicker for me. And I actually had gotten pretty good at it. I had been delving around some messed up sites, and to be honest, I'd even talked in chat rooms to some of the admins in charge of them. You'd be surprised how normal a child actor site owner would actually seem if you didn't know he also had a day job. I got more curious, though. Stupid me. After nearly 10 years of seamless making my way out of the dark web, I joined Nathan as well as a few others in the chat room, just screwing about and sharing some screwed up sites. Might sound weird, but for me it's a pretty everyday thing to do. Nathan and another friend were talking about some site that no one had managed to get past the encryption, to apart from one of the other people who's even more of a no-life than me. The rest of us are pretty sure he's autistic or some crap, because the site he shared with us was arguably the most vile thing I've ever laid eyes upon. For those of you still with me, this is why I'm posting this here. This guy is the most cancerous and revolting sector from the darkest part of the deep web. It is a scar that I bear to this day, and it is one that I will never, ever forget. The site had a subheading in the HTML. The autistic dude was in the chat room earlier and gave Nathan and I an encrypted URL for us, but he was too freaking giddy about getting through to the site himself to send us an encryption. So Nathan and I had to manually go through the whole process ourselves. We tried for hours. Nathan and I had been doing this for the entirety of our adult lives, yet we've never seen code like this before. Come to think of it, I doubt that the other guy in the chat cracked this by himself. Nathan and I both called it a night, so I left the command prompt open and went outside to smoke. Nathan remained on the chat so we can play Anvil, but when I got back, his microphone was muted for some reason. For people like us who had nothing to hide from each other, we almost never muted our mics. I waited a few minutes, thinking maybe he was jerking off or maybe gone to do something. Nothing. I don't think much of it. My brain is too occupied with the cannabinoids flowing through my bloodstream. I sat down and took another look through the code, thinking there was something that I missed. I did. The code was completely different this time, completely unencrypted. I simply launched the URL and my PC Word for a little bit, until finally opening up about 20 windows across my 2 monitors, all of them scrambling code through a debugger that I had installed. Even with 32 gigabytes of RAM, my computer was making more noise than it ever did doing this kind of stuff. I thought to myself, shit, I'm going to have to OC my shit in the BIOS if I was going to have a shot of getting through. And I was not feeling up for it after smoking too much. I get ready to hard reset before my monitors turn off, and back on one at a time. This was when I started getting a bit paranoid and was thinking about just letting it go. I wish that that's what I did. The windows were almost all gone. Only 4 still were there, and 2 of them were normal deep websites that the admin probably used to relay the IP address through. First site that I had seen do that. All of the text was a dark red and extremely primitive for a site that I thought would be at least a little bit more impressive considering its security. The main center window had only a small amount of text on the screen. If you made it this far, you know what you were in for. If you still don't, you don't belong here. Even though I was feeling mellow, the text and sheer awe of what I was getting myself into pierced me with fear. A simple Y/N prompt popped up on my window. I accepted, ready for whatever awaited me on the other side. A chat room window came up to life in the second remaining window. I was wondering what it was for. Perhaps another IP relay, or a shadow app that hid the true nature of the site behind it. It simply stated, /insert name, as well as an optional password that I'm still not sure what that was for. The fact that people might have accounts on this kind of site. Looking back on it, it's pretty fucked up. I used my most recent alias, Diablo. A couple more scrolls of red text flew up the window, and then it opened up into an actual sort of chat room like you'd see on Omegle or some crap like that. Except with no ads, or color, or anything besides the dark red text. The chat was a bit more advanced than the first window, which was now frozen and wasn't responding to any console commands I was using. I have to say, the feeling of finding this site in the first place felt pretty awesome. I couldn't wait to tell Nathan. That was until the chat window popped up with names. One that I recognized was his, using one of his aliases as well. I'd say about 36 people were in the chat room. No names that I can remember. And even if I did, I wouldn't dare reveal them. Not after all this. I tried calling Nathan on my phone, but he obviously wasn't picking up. We're so screwed. It was stupid of us to delve this deep without even knowing what we got ourselves into. Users definitely had met before, as they immediately started posting messages to the window, as me and Nathan remained silent. As they were casually talking about stuff, I was starting to calm down a bit. Maybe this was just a stupid cult website that talked about organizing deals or other dumb stuff that I found in the past. It all seemed so normal. So why all the obscurity? The first window, still blank and unresponsive, suddenly began loading up a video file of some sort. A snuff video, perhaps? It would make sense to hide one, but not this extensively, and the chat room didn't make much sense. I wish this stuff had been going through my head at the time, if I wasn't retarded enough to get stoned before going through this. I felt tempted to ask the other users what the video was about, but I was afraid that might give me away as someone who's not supposed to be there. Nathan hadn't said anything either, so I wasn't going to risk doing something suspicious like that. I got the guts to ask, "What are we all here for, thanks?" Trying to sound as eccentric and dim-witted as I could. I didn't get a response from them. As a matter of fact, no one said another word. Nathan stayed quiet, but I assumed that he noticed me in the chat as well now that I'd posted. The video had stopped loading and had begun playing. Some more messages from the other users sharing their anticipation as footage of a dark gray basement somewhere took shape on the screen. The resolution of the video was pretty awful at first, but rendered pretty well after about 30 seconds. I was scared shitless. No one else was in my house. Most of my roommates had left for summer vacation, and I didn't head home for another 2 weeks. I was alone in the dark with little else but the ambient sound of whatever was happening behind the camera in the video. It stayed like this for about 4 or 5 minutes. I spent every second of it staring at the screen, waiting for something to happen. Finally, a dude steps onto the screen holding up a whiteboard with foreign letters on it, as well as the words "cold body" underneath. The guy was freaking ominous to look at, pretty overweight, and what only could be described as a motorbiker's beard. The man spoke. I had no idea what he was saying at first. He was speaking in Chinese, I think, but I don't really know. I'm not a fucking linguist. Luckily for Nathan and I, the man had another person behind him who spoke some broken English. "Hello, users. Welcome to Cold Body Show." I think that's what he said. I was honestly more interested than scared at this point. This video looked like it could be something worth showing to others. That thought never crossed my mind again. The man with the broken English bursts into tears and sobs out of nowhere. He sobs in front of the camera and jerks around in what I can only guess was desperation. The man holding the sign yells at the guy in Chinese before another man enters the frame and puts a gun to his head. Before I can even realize it was a gun, the man fired. He didn't stop there. Pressing the barrel of the gun against the dead man's temple, he fired again and again, each shot spraying blood and what I guess were mere pieces of the skull all over the place. Okay, so a shock video. Not much out of the ordinary here. That was when I stared at the chat window again. The users were talking about what they would do next. Users were all typing in different languages, but almost all of the English ones that I read said, "Shoot him again." I realized then that I wasn't watching some shock video or stupid snuff film that the admins had hid behind the wall of proxies. This was a live stream. I was watching a live stream of people getting murdered in front of me. We all were. I type into the chat, "You sick fucks. And what the heck are you guys doing?" But the texts weren't responded to because so many people were spamming the chat with foreign text that I couldn't read. Another person is brought out in front of the camera, this time already sobbing and trying to break free of the ropes that had been bound around her ankles and wrists. She was bare naked and covered in bruises and cuts. I didn't do anything but wait for the inevitable. The man shot her in the head and watched her body fall limp on the floor. People in the chat cheered and asked for more. Someone picks up the camera and positions it in a different direction towards a metal table, covered with some sort of bin liner. The woman was dragged by the hair into the frame and placed on the table. What happened next? I don't think the world should know. I'm not kidding. The body was slumped on the table like a surgeon would do before operating on a person. Some more people, wearing red and black ski masks, went up to the body holding items varying from kitchen knives to cordless drills. I couldn't watch without feeling physically sick to my stomach. The men tore her apart limb from limb, stabbing at her torso and cutting her open. I take another glance to see one of the men having relations with the mutilated corpse. I almost immediately retched and almost vomit over my keyboard when I gained control of myself before that happened. My heart was beating like crazy. The whole situation was so messed up, and I was in way over my freaking head. By the time the men were finished, there was a literal stump of a human being left. Not that they could fucking call that a human anymore. Her head was torn off, the neck, and stuffed into her body cavity along with one of her arms. If it weren't for the other weird sights that I have seen before this, I might not have stayed as long as I did. 3 more people were brought out onto the screen, all of them screaming for their lives and trying to escape. One of them is shot in the leg. The others stand there shaking in place, trying not to scream again.
The man holding the sign walks up to the lens of the camera and stares into it. I see his black eyes, blood splattered across his face. I breathe faster, and I actually had to look away. It was like he was staring right at me. He says something else in a foreign language, probably the same one as before. When he stops speaking, the chat window does the same. Hardly a single other post, just a chat window awaiting some response. About 20 seconds pass of him just staring into the camera after speaking. Nothing happens at first. The chat then mentioned me and Nathan by our usernames. More of them spam our names in posts that take over the scrolling message board. As soon as they mentioned our aliases, I started freaking out. I try to close the black windows, but every time I try, the window says the application is not responding. The live stream continues. The man staring at me, and the message prompting me to say something. One of the few comments in proper English pops up. He's asking us which one to end first. I freeze for about 5 seconds before unplugging my computer from the wall. I didn't care about anything anymore. I just wanted to leave the site and never come back. I sat there with a blank screen in front of me for a bit before pacing around the kitchen. I was done with it. I didn't sleep at all. I was too traumatized to even think about resting after what I had seen. At the time of this happening, I was thinking about reporting the site to the police, but I, of all people, know that they can't do anything to stop this. To think that more of these sites could exist, that more people are getting gunned down and mutilated for entertainment, it's something that I can't freaking think about. I spent 2 days talking to some close friends about this stuff, though I left out all the details and just said I'd seen something disturbing online. They all know what I do in my free time, so they didn't think much of it since I'd mentioned snuff films and messed up sites before. They didn't know what Nathan and I had seen. I mustered up the courage to turn on my PC again, and I was fucking relieved to see no sign of any viruses, and most of all, no black window screens scattered on my desktop. I immediately go to check to see if Nathan had left me any messages on Radot. I had several messages from him with a few files attached to the second. I was hoping to talk this whole ordeal through with him, but the files immediately caught my eye. The attachments were pictures of me, stolen from my Facebook and email. Pictures of my old school, university, and even my friends here. The messages after were all my addresses, email, online aliases, and even the names of my family members. My IP address was posted to the bottom, and I realized how screwed I am. The last picture of me and my old girlfriend, with her IP address and details pasted on the top of the picture. There's no freaking way that they tracked me down. I take a few minutes to pull myself together before writing back. What the fuck? I didn't get a response, and I still haven't to this day. He has all of my details. He knows everything about me and my family, and I don't even know what else. I still don't know what has happened to him since I left that live stream. I can only pray that the information he has doesn't fall into the hands of those murderous, insane motherfuckers who killed and desecrated dozens of people on the darkest parts of the internet. I can't let them find me, or those that I care about. I will never go back to that part of the internet ever again. It's not safe for me, or you, or anyone else. The police can't find them, but they can find you. Don't try and find the site. Don't try and report the site. They will do to you what they did to me. And if you think that they won't find you, then remember that I was fucking invisible.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.